are your thoughts in the last couple of years? They traded away Zibanejad. They traded away Hoffman. They traded away some of the great players we've seen, and they've gone on to bigger and better things. And some of them have gone on and been successful. All the different places. Zibanejad is one of the best players on the Rangers. Hoffman, he's been all over the place. He was in Florida, and now he's playing right now for St. Louis, a championship team. So what are your thoughts on moving along with some of the great superstar players that they've had over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think the Zibanejad one is one that stings for me. That trade in particular hurt because it was right when we were making a push. And I do think that Derek Brassard was a big part of the Ottawa Senators when they went on their run in 2017, where we were a goal away from the final when Chris Kunitz broke all of our hearts. But aside from that, like, I think that a lot of the moves needed to happen, as much as that hurts to say, especially because in the moment it was a really fresh wound. And watching all of your favorite players, I think it was 6 or 7 of our best players got moved within like a 24-month period. And like, as a fan, like that's a kind of like you have you're pissed off at management. You're pissed off at what's going on because like, these are the guys that you watch every night and you appreciate their games. But I think when you look at it, there was a year, like at least 1 year when they started moving these guys, and then 2 years where all of a sudden after that playoff run, the Ottawa Senators fell to the bottom of the league. And I think management recognized that with the team that they had, they were going to have to pay these guys big contracts, but they weren't a contender. So I think in their opinions, they were thinking, well, we're going to have to pay these guys. And if we're not going to be making the playoffs consistently, but we're paying to the cap, then what's the point? Why don't we blow it up? And why don't we rebuild it? And I think now looking back in hindsight, it's a lot easier to be like, you know what? I really respect that decision because I do. Like, Erik Karlsson was my God. And we traded this guy for Rudolph Balcers? I didn't know who this guy was. Like, I had no idea what was going on. And now I look back, we have this German kid, Tim Stützle, with a bit of luck. Josh Norris looks like he's going to be a hell of a player. He's already playing a first-line center role in the NHL. And, I mean, he's good. Like, he's playing well with Tkachuk. And, I mean, I'm happy with it now. But in the moment, I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little upset.
You mentioned Stützle as being one of the other young players that have really been a big difference maker with Ottawa so far. You got him, you got Brady Tkachuk, you got Shabbat, who I see the jersey behind you, Joseph, one of the best young defensemen we've seen really in the league so far in recent memory. So what do you think about those young player developments? And do you think the coaching staff has done a good job really maintaining and developing those players?
So I think first off, I love our young core. I love the Tim Stützles and Shabbat and stuff. These guys are the future of the team. And right now we have some of the older guys who are coming in, and I'm not going to call them plugs, but they're just filling out a roster spot until some of the other guys can come into their game. We still have guys down in the minors like Logan Brown, who is called up now, Alex Formanton. So we have quite a pool of prospects and rookies. Now, as far as the way coaching has handled it, it was no secret they've handled it pretty poor since the beginning of the season. It's come out today. They were saying there's been a plan since day one, and so everyone has been exactly where they're supposed to be as planned. Now, I think when you look at a guy like DJ, who's still a young coach, he's only in his second year coaching in the NHL. He's just falling back on what he's learned as a coach. In tough moments, you fall back on your veteran players, and that's one of the things you learn as a coach right from day one. So I think he's starting to come around a bit more, playing the young guys a bit more. He's taking the leash off of Tim Stützle a little bit more. Brady Tkachuk is just going to be Brady Tkachuk. At the end of the day, every team wants a Brady Tkachuk. Ottawa's really lucky to have him. That guy's a heart and soul player. That guy will bleed for anybody on that team. If you've ever watched his interviews, he has zero connections to Ottawa before becoming an Ottawa Senator, but now that kid bleeds the city. He loves the city. He loves his teammates. And with a leader like that, and I hope he gets to see, but with a leader like that on the team, that team has so much potential. We're going places. Just wait.
We are talking to New Era Sens podcast personalities Joseph David and Brennan Detzler. Now, I will say this: I was there at the draft when Brady Tkachuk got drafted. I've met Keith. He's a real, you know what? I'm not going to say it on live radio. He's a real ass. And Matthew Tkachuk is another ass. And Brady, I spoke to Brady for maybe 5 seconds, and maybe he might be a nice guy. Maybe on TV or on radio he's a nice guy, but personally I think the whole family can kiss my rear end. That's just my opinion. I met Keith Tkachuk when, believe it or not, I was on the ice when the St. Louis Blues won the Stanley Cup, and Keith was on the ice, and we interviewed Keith Tkachuk. He's not one of those nice guys. He's not really much he doesn't really say much. If you're not a named person like a Brett Hull or somebody like that asking him questions, he'll answer questions with 1 or 2 word answers. He's not a very nice guy. Fantastic hockey player. Fantastic. Keith Tkachuk is one of the greatest American-born hockey players to ever play the game, and anybody that argues that doesn't know what they're talking about. And Matthew Tkachuk is one of the most underrated hockey players in the NHL right now, and Brady Tkachuk, I think, is going to be better than Matthew because of his ability of some of the things that he likes to do, and he's a great leader. He's a better leader than Matthew. I don't know how long Matthew's going to be in Calgary. I think he's going to weigh out his presence over there, and I think there'll be other teams more interested in him in the long run. So tell me a little bit on your thoughts. In the last 2 years of his growth, Brady Tkachuk, he's their superstar. He's their leader. He's the guy. He's the face of the Ottawa Senators. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on where you see Brady Tkachuk's ceiling will be in the future.
Yeah, I think Brady Tkachuk is just I think his ceiling is going to be if not one of the best net front presence guys in the NHL. I think that last year he was on pace to be the first player in NHL history to record 300 shots and 300 hits in the same season, which as a 21-year-old, that's unbelievable. Like, the kid is still filling into his frame. He's still finding his game. I don't know. I think that he will put up a lot of points. I don't know. There might be one season where Matthew Tkachuk puts up more points than Brady does. Kind of that goes down. Maybe he ends up with more points when the year ends. But just Brady's impact on the game, I think that we see it now so often in these power forwards. We saw how important Tom Wilson was when Washington won that Stanley Cup. We saw how important, well, at least Canadians have seen how important Josh Anderson is in Montreal. If you guys have been tuned in to any of their games, like, he has been such a force and really changed the way that they play. And like, you having that kind of guy, like, it's one of those things. Pierre Dorion, when they drafted Tkachuk, and I know Ottawa fans, when we opted to pick 4th overall, we passed on Zadina, we took Tkachuk, and we ended up giving Colorado the next pick. Like, there was definitely some question marks, but aside from that, like, now we're really watching this guy in the last 2 years and just all the things that he does and how he continues to grow his game. And when he gets pissed off, how he decides to fight. He's our best forward, and he's willing to go out there and fight another guy that pisses him off or picks on a teammate. And I just think, like, as a fan of that team, like, and just watching him go, I think that his ceiling is so high because he's willing to work for it. And he might never be an 80 or 90 point guy. He'll probably be in the 70 range, in my opinion. I think, like, in terms of points, 30 goals, I think he has the creativity to maybe get 40 points in a full, or 40 assists in a full season. Just being in front of the net. He is a decent playmaker too, but I think just his impact in how physical he can be, like, he could be the reason that the Ottawa Senators win a Stanley Cup in the future. He could be a huge part in that. And that's what I see his ceiling as, is just being one of the best power forwards in the league.
So they got a new goalie in Matt Murray, which is a very interesting trade that the Penguins made. They were having trouble with the cap, so they decided to move on from Murray. He's had some injury issues after winning the 2 Stanley Cups. But he's still young at the same time. So where do you think he'll be as essentially a short-term option right now and also a long-term option? Are you concerned about the injuries, or do you think this is a good thing for Ottawa, who's, after Craig Anderson had that 1 great year, 2 great years, really have had trouble finding goaltending?
Yeah, so I think the injuries, they're a little bit of a concern, but Matt Murray's still young, like you said. So I'm not too concerned about him re-injuring himself too much. To be honest with you, I was pretty vocal when Ottawa went and traded for him. I was against it at first because Ottawa has a bunch of young, up-and-coming goalies that are going to be really good. In Joey Daccord, for example, who I personally think is the future of this team. And you can't put him as a backup, and you can't put him on the bench for 5 years. You just cannot do that. So I personally think Matt Murray is just an expensive bench warmer in the future. Right now, he has not performed the way Ottawa is expecting him to. We went and got him so that he can seal games, so that he can make incredible saves, fully knowing what the team is this year. We have bad defense. There's no expectations on the team. But, we went and grabbed Matt Murray. Matt Murray's supposed to be our savior, win games for us. And he hasn't done that. I mean, he's performed better the last couple of games. Right now, they just finished the first period against Edmonton, and he's looking pretty good. So hopefully he's, the jitters are out, whatever it is, and he starts to play for what's worth for his contract. But at the end of the day, I think Matt Murray is going to be irrelevant in 3 years when you have a young Joey Daccord coming up. Unless Matt Murray spends the next 3 years really wowing everybody, I think he's just an expensive bench warmer in the future.
As you guys know, we are talking to New Era Sens podcast personalities from Belly Up Sports, Joseph David and Brennan Detzler. Now, Detzler is a good hockey name, by the way, because I played hockey and I was a top prospect. I don't know if you guys know anything about me. That's what I used to play. I played almost 16 years of top-end hockey. I played against Sidney Crosby. I've skated with some my line mates, Chris Higgins, Kamasarek. I was being looked at as a top low-end first-round draft pick, early second-round draft pick when I was going to play college hockey, and I hurt my knee, and it's a whole long story. So I know a little bit about hockey. I know a lot about hockey, but what are your thoughts because of the COVID-19, the shortness of the season, some of these, I guess, divisions? Do you guys like the divisions that were set up? I know the Islanders and the Rangers and Devils got screwed in the division that they're in.
Yeah.
So do you guys like the structure of Gary Bettman's division stature that he has made this year in a short season?
So I love it just because I really want to see the rivalries come back in terms of like the Ottawa Senators. So I'm biased here. Like I love the fact that Ottawa gets to play Toronto a little more than they would, Montreal a bunch, but now we get to see a Brady and a Matthew Tkachuk showdown. 9 times I think it was this season, and just being able, we get to see Connor McDavid 8 times, and like it's just. In terms of that, like there was 2 fights in the first 5 minutes of the Edmonton Ottawa game today because the rivalry has just been set up that much quicker. I think just the way that it's set up, it's almost like a mini playoff because there's often 3 games against the same 2 teams, and they're able to kind of build up that haste and things get serious and it gets real physical. And like, it's a lot grindier. And like, I love that part of hockey. I miss that part of hockey. I want to tune into games. I love the Battle of Alberta last year because you didn't know what was going to happen next. You didn't know if the entire benches were going to clear 5 minutes into the game and everyone's going to be throwing it down. In terms of that, I love it. In terms of the difficulty of the division and the way that they were spread, I don't know that it was done the most equally. I could definitely see if I was an Islanders or Rangers or any team's fan in that division, I probably wouldn't be the happiest because they definitely got the short end of the stick. And even as an Ottawa fan, I'm not too thrilled because we all expected going into the season that we would finish at the bottom of this division because of how good a lot of these teams are that we're playing. The majority of them are playoff teams or close to. And so yeah, I mean, in terms of entertainment, I love it. In terms of where teams are going to finish, how equally spread it was done, it might not have been done the best, but I think given the circumstances and given the fact that from the Canadian government, they really pushed the fact that it was either going to have to be a Canadian division or they were going to go to the States. Like international travel was kind of out of the question. I think that they did a decent job given what it was. I'll maybe give it like a 7.5 out of 10.
A lot higher than I thought.